Hey there guys, so this is a video that's been kind of brewing in me for a while. I've wanted to make a video about this and talk about this stuff, and yeah, I wasn't really sure how to articulate this video. I wasn't really sure where to begin, but it's just a few things I want to talk about. Now, obviously the heavyweight division is getting a lot of attention at the moment. It's getting a lot of media, a lot of buzz. There's a heck of a lot of back and forth between the fan bases of two particular fighters, Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, who are the two champions at heavyweight right now. There's obviously a lot of attention, a lot of buzz. It's at a good place right now in terms of public interest and intrigue. But I've got to be honest, guys, and I'm seeing comments all over the place. I'm seeing video titles talking about how this is a new golden age for heavyweight boxing, talking about how great the heavyweight division is, talking about how great Anthony Joshua is, and how good a role model he is, and how he's doing so great for boxing, and how this Deontay Wilder fight is going to be such a blockbuster, and it's going to be basically the biggest fight of all time. Like they're really, really trying to hype this fight, really trying to sell this fight. There's a lot of really, really rehearsed back and forth, just nonsense between the two. I mean, a lot of the trash talk. Deontay Wilder came out recently saying that he wants to kill somebody in the ring. Total publicity stunt. Anthony Joshua made a racist comment because, as you know, nothing sells a fight in the boxing community like race these days, does it? I mean, if a fight doesn't have racial connotations to it, most people aren't interested. Let's just keep it real. So yeah, the way that they're trying to market this fight, the way that they're dragging this fight out, the way that they're building it, does it remind you guys of anything? Because it reminds me of something. It reminds me of Mayweather Pacquiao, and we all know what a farcical situation that was. But anyway, the reason why I wanted to make this video initially is because, guys, let's be perfectly honest, the heavyweight division isn't that good right now. It's actually pretty weak when you think about it. I was saying to Red Fox in the comment section of one of his videos, I was talking about this, and I also was talking about this to my friend too recently, and we were talking about how when I was growing up, I basically grew up in the Klitschko era. I know a lot of you guys who were from the 80s and 70s and whatnot, you guys grew up with the likes of Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis. I know to you guys, those guys were the heavyweight champions of your era, of your time. But for me, as I was growing up, it was very much the Klitschko brothers. Those guys were the pinnacle of the sport for me. I mean, I used to watch boxing when I was a very young kid. I used to watch it when I was in school, and I always saw these two, because obviously the heavyweight division is the glamour division, and I always knew that, even as a kid, even as a teenager. And the Klitschko brothers to me were the top guys in the sport. They were number one, even though I was a big fan of like Joe Calzaghe, guys like that, Arthur Abraham. I was a Ricky Hatton fan at the time too. I was into a lot of fighters from other divisions, but I always understood, I always knew that these two, were the best. These two were the kings of the sport. They were at the top, because the heavyweight division, then there's everybody else. I mean, if you put the heavyweight champion in the ring with the featherweight champion, skills don't matter. The heavyweight's going to win. So I always understood that those guys were the number one, number two heavyweights, and it was clear that they weren't ever going to fight. So you had to accept them as kind of a package. The heavyweight division back then, let's look at who some of the contenders were. So you had David Haye on the scene, who became a champion and a contender. I remember being really excited when David Haye moved up to heavyweight initially, and he was initially talking about the Klitschko fight. I was really, really buzzed and hyped for that fight at first, until they dragged it out for another 2 years, and it took fucking David Haye 2 years to grow a pair of balls and step in the ring, because he kept pulling out of the fight and whatnot, and he eventually got his arse whooped. But initially I was very excited about Haye. You had the likes of Ruslan Chagayev. You had, of course, Manwol Char, who went on to lose to a 42-year-old Vitaly Klitschko by stoppage in 4 rounds. Obviously, you had Kubrat Pulev on the way up, guys like Dimitrenko, Alexander Povetkin, of course. You had Who else was there? Eddie Chambers, he was a top contender at the time. Guys like Calvin Brock, Chris Bird. Um, you know, there was a lot of guys who are still around today. And what do you notice about that? What do you notice about that, guys? Well, I just mentioned it, didn't I? A lot of those guys are still around today. Okay? For all the people who keep saying that the Klitschko era of heavyweight boxing was a weak era and somehow a bad era, can you guys explain to me why it is that many of those guys I just mentioned are actually top 10 heavyweight contenders right now? David Haye and Ruslan Chagayev and Alexander Povetkin. Now, those guys were all WBA regular heavyweight champion at different points during the Klitschko era. Ruslan Chagayev at his prime got absolutely smashed and obliterated by Vladimir Klitschko when two guys were pretty much at their best. I think that fight happened in 2009. So yeah, Klitschko was about 34 or something at the time. And Chagayev, that was back when he was in shape, back when he was, actually undefeated and actually was a serious fighter. He'd recently beaten the likes of Valuev and whatnot. So, he was actually a, commendable champion at that time. He was the WBA champion. Why it wasn't on the line, I've no idea. But, I digress. Ruslan Chagayev got obliterated by Vladimir Klitschko back then. Do you know that in 2016... the same Ruslan Chagayev, who is now morbidly obese, suffers from hepatitis and is half blind, was able to drop and school Lucas Browne, who was a top 10 heavyweight, still a top 10 heavyweight today, I believe. He recently fought in a heavyweight eliminator against Dillian Whyte, which he lost, but, it was an eliminator. So, you got guys like Ruslan Chagayev, who can still compete. You've got Kubrat Pulev, who up until recently was mandatory for Anthony Joshua's title. That was a fight that was recently signed. You've got Alexander Povetkin right now, top heavyweight, top 3 heavyweight. Okay, a lot of people actually have him as one of the best heavyweights in the world right now. When Alexander Povetkin was, a champion in the Klitschko era, people saw him as nothing more than a paper champion. People didn't really rate Povetkin. I mean, when you looked at the up-and-coming heavyweights, back in like 2009, 2010, Povetkin, yeah, he was a top contender, but nobody really believed in him. Nobody believed that he could compete with Klitschko, and we saw what happened when the Klitschko fight did happen in 2013. A prime Alexander Povetkin versus an aging Vladimir Klitschko. We saw what happened. So, do you guys get the gist of what I'm saying? You got Povetkin, Pulev, Dimitrenko still around. I mentioned him earlier in the video. He recently had a first-round knockout over an unbeaten contender, Adrian Granat. You've still got, Chagayev, although he's officially retired now, he's still fairly competitive. I mean, he was beating Lucas Browne. You've still got guys like Shannon Briggs in the mix. Shannon Briggs, who again up until recently was a contender, was supposed to be fighting for a title. You've got Manuel Charr right now, today, in this era of the heavyweight division, this so-called golden era. The same Manuel Charr who at his prime, when he was in shape, when he was undefeated, was obliterated in 4 rounds by a 42-year-old, partially retired Vitaly Klitschko. Manuel Charr, today, when he is washed up, while, he's had like a hip replacement. The guy had hip surgery last year. The guy was shot after a devastating, brutal knockout defeat he suffered at the hands of cruiserweight Myris Bridis. He was also knocked out by Povetkin. I mentioned the Klitschko fight. He was beaten by Johan Duhaupas. That guy, to this day, that guy is one of the heavyweight champions. He's the WBA heavyweight champion today. Guys, how is this a golden era of heavyweight boxing? So you've got Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. First of all, Deontay Wilder, the very definition of a paper champion. If you want to call Charr a paper champion, which he is, I'm not disputing that. He's certainly a paper champion. Deontay Wilder only was able to win that WBC belt because Vitaly Klitschko was old and he retired. I'm pretty sure if Vitaly Klitschko was still at his prime and was still fighting and was still holding that belt, Wilder would probably still be fighting on undercards, he would still be an undercard attraction, fighting, a bum each couple of months, like he was prior to Vitaly Klitschko retiring. I mean, Vitaly never attempted to challenge Vitaly. I mean, Wilder never attempted to challenge Vitaly Klitschko, did he? In all those years that he was a contender, he never once made any effort to get in the ring with a Klitschko brother. So, I mean, when you've got guys like Wilder, as a seasoned contender and now a champion with over 40 fights, and the only half-decent opponent on his resume is Luis Ortiz, is it really a golden era of heavyweight boxing? I mean, one of Wilder's most notorious victories was against Chris Arriola. This is the same Chris Arriola who, I might add, was dominated by cruiserweight Thomas Adamek, who is another one who's still around, by the way. Thomas Adamek is still a contender at heavyweight in this so-called golden era. He was, again, obliterated by a prime Vitaly Klitschko. An aging Vitaly Klitschko, while Chris Arriola was at his prime, and that fight was in Chris Arriola's hometown, I believe, in California, as was the Adamek fight. Both Adamek, a cruiserweight, and Vitaly Klitschko went over and pulverized him, schooled him, made him look stupid, and that was a prime Chris Arriola. So, when you got Deontay Wilder fighting guys like that in optional title defenses, and with his only world-class or semi-world-class opponent being Luis Ortiz, it's funny as fuck, man. I mean, Anthony Joshua, man, a 41-year-old Vladimir Klitschko who's supposed to be this big stiff fucking board, this big stiff robot. If you ask these, cliche celebrity boxing fans like Liam Neeson, you ask him about the Klitschko brothers, he says, they're big stiff boards that can't box. They would be nothing in the Muhammad Ali era. They're just big, tall robots. But I mean, how is it that this big, tall robot at 41 years old is able to go to Anthony Joshua's hometown in London, drop him, school him, and completely outbox him before getting stopped prematurely in the 11th round? I mean, just imagine if that was a 35-year-old Vladimir Klitschko in the ring with Joshua. Imagine if that was the Vladimir Klitschko that David Haye had to fight in Germany. Imagine if it was that Vladimir Klitschko against Anthony Joshua. Would Anthony Joshua have made it out of that 6th round? I mean, do you know, I doubt that fight would go 5 rounds. I really do. I think Vladimir Klitschko at his prime, back when he had his time in, back when he was active, back when he wasn't coming off a 1.5-year layoff and a defeat, that version of Vladimir Klitschko would have pulverized Anthony Joshua, in my opinion. He would have knocked him out, schooled him without a doubt. And I mean, what he would do to Deontay Wilder, it doesn't even bear thinking about, man. I mean, but, guys, the heavyweight division ain't that good. It just ain't, I'm sorry. When guys like Chigayev and Pulev and Povetkin, guys like Thomas Adamek, Manbo Char, even you've still got Samuel Peter who's still fighting, for fuck's sake. I mean, these guys are still around. These guys are still dangerous. Alexander Dimitrenko is still a solid European level contender. Okay, I would take Alexander Dimitrenko over quite a few of these prospects they have over in the UK. I mean, guys, the division just ain't that good. I'm sorry, it ain't. And all the dick riding that's going on right now, all the crowing from boxing fans about how this is a new era, a new age era where, the division is now exciting. Guys, I personally, and I can only speak for myself, I was always excited about the heavyweight division. When I was a young kid, when I was a teenager in school, I used to love heavyweight boxing. I used to love watching the Klitschko brothers. I used to love watching David Haye. I used to love watching, guys like Thomas Adamek, Dimitrenko, Povetkin, all these guys. I used to watch a lot of old fights that I could get video footage of. I was always intrigued, and I always knew who the champions were. I knew that the Klitschko brothers were the kings, and it was all up to whoever was, to try and dethrone them. Like I said, you had a lot of young Americans. You had guys like Eddie Chambers on the come up. You had guys like Calvin Brock and Chris Bird and all those guys. And the Klitschko brothers always ruled the roost. And to me, they were fantastic athletes. and I could never understand the disrespect that they kept getting from fans. How, people were just never happy. Always slating these guys, calling them big stiff boards and saying they can't fight, this, that, and the other, robots, and just absolute bums, and trash in the heavyweight division. Whereas, I remember when David Haye moved up to heavyweight from cruiserweight because he was the unified cruiserweight champion after the Macaronelli fight. And all of a sudden, people took an interest. People in the UK, I mean, like people I went to school with and whatnot, they all of a sudden took an interest in the heavyweight division that I was always interested in. And saying that David Haye was going to come and be the savior of the division. He was going to knock both the Klitschko brothers out. He was going to take their heads off. He was he was walking around with a T-shirt with a picture of the Klitschko brothers' heads on the T-shirt. That shit was funny, man. Come on, like the heavyweight division has always been fun, man. The Klitschko era was legendary. It was. I love the Klitschko era of heavyweight boxing, and yeah, guys. I don't know what else to say. I wanted to make this video. I wanted to talk about it because I'm not that impressed with what I'm seeing right now. The whole thing with the Anthony Joshua Joseph Parker fight. Look, I like Joseph Parker. I like Anthony Joshua. I got nothing against the guys. But the fight was whack. Both guys could have done better, in my opinion, and I was not impressed with the way the fight was officiated. Okay, I don't like this political bullshit in boxing, guys. I can't stand it. I'm sick and tired of seeing fighters. When there's a fight that's supposed to happen, like this Wilder Joshua fight is supposed to happen, and you see referees and judges blatantly favouring the house fighter, man. Like Deontay Wilder was saved by the referee against Ortiz. They came in, they brought in the doctor and had to examine him to give him a break. And also the judges' scorecards had him up, whereas he was clearly losing the fight. I personally thought Joseph Parker did enough to beat Anthony Joshua. He never got the decision. My subscribers disagree with me, but I thought that Parker clearly outworked and outboxed him over the first half. I thought he gave away a lot of the later rounds, and the fight hung in the balance, but no way was it a 118-110 fight. Fuck off with that shit, man. So, come on. Ugh. Boxing, it pisses me off sometimes. It does, man. And then you got Eddie Hearn, because on the undercard, Povetkin had a brutal knockout win over David Price, and Eddie Hearn saying, oh, no, Povetkin now has to fight Dillian Whyte. Eddie, I thought Wilder had to fight Dillian Whyte. I thought you said that, Dillian Whyte's the WBC mandatory, and if Wilder wants to fight Joshua, he has to fight Dillian Whyte first. Why are you now trying to use the human shield, as German Persian so eloquently put it? Shout out to him, he's one of my subs. He called Dillian Whyte the human shield, or the human AJ shield. That was quite funny. And he says, he said he was going to use Whyte, to try and build the AJ Wilder fight, and he was going to go for that fight and force a purse bid. So why now are you doing a complete 180 and saying you're going to put Whyte in with Povetkin? Why the fuck does Povetkin have to fight Whyte? Okay, they're on different paths. Povetkin is the WBA and the WBO mandatory. Okay, he should be the mandatory. He's the mandatory for Anthony Joshua. That if he's going to fight anybody next, it should be either Manuel Charr, who has the WBA belt, or Anthony Joshua, who has the full WBA super belt. So, yeah, fuck putting Dillian Whyte in with Povetkin. That makes no logistical sense. You just don't want Povetkin to go in there and upset the party and destroy Anthony Joshua. I'm not saying that'll happen, but Eddie Hearn was clearly worried about it. And, yeah, he doesn't want that to happen. He wants Dillian Whyte to come in and save the day. So, yeah, wants Dillian Whyte to save the day. He wants Povetkin to get a bit older, because even if Povetkin beats Dillian Whyte, the fight will take something out of him, like I'm sure the David Price fight has, because he did take a couple of solid shots in there. So Povetkin's only going to get older, okay? He's nearly 39 years old, so they're looking to age Povetkin so that he's out of the picture, and by the time he gets to Joshua, he's not a threat. So yeah, this heavyweight division, man, it sucks. I can't really get behind these guys anymore. Anthony Joshua is, he came out with a big rant about how he doesn't have to go to America. He's going to spend his whole fight, his whole career in the UK. The Klitschko brothers fought all over the world, guys. Okay, you can criticize the Klitschko brothers all you want, but the fact of the matter is they fought everywhere. They fought many opponents in their backyards. Okay, Vitaly fought Herbie Hyde in London. He fought Chris Arriola in California. He fought Thomas Adamek in Warsaw, Poland, in front of thousands of Polish fans. He fought in America several times. He fought Lennox Lewis in America. He fought Danny Williams in America. He fought many fights in Germany. I think he fought in Russia for his last fight against Manuel Char, which was a neutral location. He fought in Ukraine too. Fought all over the place. Fought in Switzerland, I believe. These guys fought everywhere. They fought everywhere. Vladimir fought David Hay in Germany. I know that was the big fight in Germany, but he fought many fights there. He also fought in Ukraine. He fought in Russia against Povetkin in Povetkin's backyard in front of thousands of Russian fans. He fought Joshua in London, in front of 90,000 UK fans. He signed to fight David Hay in London the first time. That was going to happen in Stamford Bridge, but the fight fell apart because David Hay pulled out. He fought Bryant Jennings in New York, in America. He fought guys like Axel Schultz, and he also fought, what was his name, Ray Mercer, guys like that. He fought Sam Peter in America, fought Calvin Brock in America. Those guys fought all over the place. The Klitschkos fought all over the place. You can't accuse them of A-siding opponents. They didn't do that, okay? Because if they were to A-side their opponents, they would have had every fight in Ukraine, or they'd have had every fight in Germany. But no, they fought all over the place. He fought Tony Thompson in Switzerland, I believe. They travelled for fights. They were world champions, world heavyweight champions. That's the reason I heard about them as a kid, because they were fighting British fighters, they were fighting American fighters, they were fighting everybody all over the place. So, yeah, the Klitschko brothers were travelling warriors who fought everybody anywhere. So, with Anthony Joshua coming out with that statement saying, no, I don't need to go to America, I don't need to go anywhere, I'm staying in the UK because I make money here. Fuck that. I'm not getting behind that. No chance. No way. I'm not supporting that behaviour. I don't support that from Americans. When I hear Andre Ward come out and say that he won't travel and he doesn't have to travel, he's going to stay in America because he's the king, he's the A-side, all that A-side bullshit, I'm not going to get behind that. So why should I get behind a British fighter doing it? Okay? I'm going to be consistent with this shit, okay, guys? I'm not going to dick ride Anthony Joshua. No way. So let me know what you guys think. I don't really want to be ranting too much. The heavyweight division sucks, man. Yeah, let me know what you guys think anyway. Let's see what happens with this bullshit. Thanks for watching, guys.